everyday world that Jesus lived. It is based off of the book, The World That Jesus Knew, a curious kid's guide to life in the first century. So this would have been the everyday life that Jesus lived. Today we're talking about Roman rulers, the Roman soldier, and crime and punishment during this time. The Roman Empire at this time was vast. It stretched all the way north to what is now known as France, down to Egypt, and then east to Armenia. It was a large area. How did the Roman Empire enforce its rule? They had local kings that had areas to enforce and control, and they would enforce the rules, provide order and control, and then enforce those things like goods and money to be paid to the empire. In Palestine, King Herod was that person. He was smart. He was a good builder. He stayed on the emperor's good side, but he also was very popular amongst the people that he ruled. He renovated the Jerusalem temple. That put him in good favor and status with the Roman Empire, while also making local people tolerant of the Roman rule if they were able to worship at their temple. This sort of politics and economy had been part of the Roman Empire for 1,000 years at the time that Jesus came into his ministry. He lived life under the Roman rule every day. He paid taxes, he paid tolls, he made way for Roman soldiers in the streets. But Jesus and his followers and prophets like John the Baptist were a threat to King Herod. They were a threat to the Roman Empire because they were popular. They had followers. And this created a threat to the power structure of this time. That vast area of the Roman Empire, just one man, Jesus, could take it all out. And so this kind of laid the groundwork for his life to come. So let's take a closer look at a little glimpse at the power structure at this time. So how it works. The emperor gives the role of king to someone who is loyal, someone who is local, who can enforce rules and can also collect all of the taxes and the goods that would come back to the empire. And that person in this area was Herod. Herod is a king, and now he owes the emperor loyalty, support, and money. So how is he going to do this? Herod picks powerful families to help him rule, and in exchange, they owe him loyalty, support, and money. And this type of setup is known as a patron-client relationship. When things go wrong, people with the more power try to fix it by replacing the people with less power. People with no power get used and often abused. So as we take a closer look in the map, Roman Palestine was divided into different regions. Some of these names might seem familiar: Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, the Good Samaritan, Nazareth. These were all areas that had a significant city or distinct population that Herod oversaw. Okay, so let's take a closer look at the Roman army. Now, we have the emperor, we have the king, and then we have the army. The army would have been the people on the ground enforcing the laws, the rules, and the customs of the emperor and the king. Now, the Romans were really good at being an empire. They had incredible advancements in architecture, road construction, water, bringing water to the masses, and they were really good at being an army. It was very structured, very organized. It's estimated in the Roman Empire there was about 150,000 men all over. In the Palestine area, there were several cohorts of men. Cohorts equal about 500 men or soldiers of auxiliary men. Now, auxiliaries were people who were local that were recruited by the Roman Empire to be soldiers. They could not serve as legionary or infantry soldiers because they were not citizens. They were paid less, but they still functioned as an enforcer or a soldier locally. If they made it until retirement, they were able to be eligible for citizenship once they retired. So that might have been a draw for them. But these would be the people that Jesus saw every day and encountered their rules and customs. So let's take a closer look at the Roman soldier. So the Roman army developed a reputation for producing professional soldiers who knew about building, diplomacy, government, as well as fighting. The army had a power structure within itself. Centurions in Judea were part of the elite class and often had their families who lived there with them. They were paid 15 times what a regular soldier earned in a year, and that was a really big deal. The Roman soldier, just a little glimpse at him, I think you think of the iconic headwear that he wears. The fan on top was dyed horsehair. He had a sideways crest made of horsehair as well as his helmet on top of his head. He had a cloak of fine cloth, a metal breastplate, medals for bravery that he earned. He always had a dagger on his right side and a sword and a wooden vine for a cane and a shield and a spiked spear that he carried. So, as you can imagine, Jesus lived under two different kinds of worlds and therefore lived under two different systems of laws as well. The Roman laws from the Roman Empire and the Jewish laws from his faith. He was accused of blasphemy, which is insulting or speaking disrespectfully against God by the Jewish courts. And then in turn, he was also convicted of insurrection, which means rebelling against the Roman government. And as a result of that, he was sentenced to crucifixion, which we now know as dying on the cross. And this was reserved for the very worst of criminals. So let's take a closer look at Roman law versus Jewish law. So the Roman laws were administered by the governor or prefect of the Roman province of Judea. This person held all the power and the life or the death over every single person in its province. Major cases like murder or insurrection were heard by this prefect, and more minor cases were heard by the magistrates. Pontius Pilate was the prefect of Judea from 26 to 36 CE, so he oversaw the trial and conviction of Jesus. So minor crimes were theft or fraud. More major crimes, robbery, arson, murder, rioting, stealing from the temple, treason. Prison wasn't really used as a long-term punishment in the ancient world, but just more of a place to put people who are awaiting trial or sentencing. The punishments were more serious among the Romans. They could include fines for more minor crimes, or enslavement, beating, or whipping, execution, or exile for more serious crimes. Jewish laws generally didn't interest the Romans. Jewish laws were administered by Jewish religious courts, and they imposed the penalties, including excommunications, which means getting kicked out of the religion of the synagogue. They could charge fines or administer beatings or lashings. Jewish crimes were things like breaking the Sabbath by working, violating the temple, blasphemy against God, adultery, and Jewish punishment usually intended to restore the broken trust of the community. Now, unlike Greek and Roman laws, which were based in ancient philosophy and intended to make society function, Jewish law begins with the Ten Commandments revealed to Moses by God. Many ancient religions included purity rules and laws that govern things like rituals and sacrifice, but Jewish law is unique because the attention God gives to things like caring for your neighbors, being honest in business, taking a day off to rest. In the book of Leviticus, which is all about the Jewish law, there are very specific laws saying you stand up in the presence of the aged, show respect for the elderly, and revere God. Do not plant your field with two kinds of seeds. Don't hold back the wages of a hired worker overnight. So these laws and traditions really focused on the care of the community. Okay, friends, so that is it for today. I hope you understand a little bit more of the complex political and social structure that Jesus lived in and how many people and rulers were all above him and how complex his world really was, living under two systems of law, the Roman law and Jewish law. And so we will be back next week for week 3 of The World That Jesus Knew with getting around, so roads, animals, carts, things like that. How did Jesus travel? Home life, what were homes like? Bedrooms, living areas, how do people cook their food? Things like that. And finally, getting dressed. What did people wear during the time of Jesus? I think we kind of maybe have an image of in our minds of what Jesus would wear, but what did that really mean? Did he have one shirt? Did he have 10 shirts? So stay tuned next week as we talk more about the life that Jesus lived.